Thank you, Trisina, and Brian. Thank you so much for the invitation to moderate again today. Always happy to work and support these amazing initiatives. I am going to begin today's discussion with a little rapid fire icebreaker session that these ladies have agreed to participate in, by the way. Just to get us started, we want to have an impactful conversation, right? This is, in fact, EmpowHER Mosaic, but we want to paint a very honest, authentic, and genuine picture of what the lives of these amazing women look like, how they're leading, what has inspired them, and how they can inspire each and every one of us. And so we're going to start by just lightening things up a bit as we dive deeper into the conversation and into the questions in a bit. And so no one has to start, right? Because it's always, I don't know if I want to be the first one to speak or to answer a question. I'm going to get us started with this rapid fire, okay? So one of the icebreaker questions was if you had an opportunity to, and we've heard this question before, to have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, who would they be? And so I'm going to answer that one. So for me, if I had this opportunity, it would be me, myself, and I, right? But quite honestly, it would be myself at 9 years old. Myself then at 21, and then myself at 42. And so I use that opportunity to tell my 9-year-old self that she should dive into her confidence and to her voice and use it, continue to use it and be brave. I tell my 21-year-old self to take risks and that it's okay to make mistakes. And then I would ask my 42-year-old self, what's holding me back? What am I missing? What should I be paying more attention to? So me, myself, and I, that's who I would choose. AJ Jefferson, how about you?
Well, the 3 people that I would love to have dinner with, one is my grandmother. My grandmother helped to raise me, and she passed away in 1998. So before she could see the woman that I became. So
check your mic, AJ.
What do you want me to do with this one? What do you want me to do? It's on.
Okay, maybe bring it a little closer.
Bring it close.
Yeah.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Right.
Oh, that's
right. Okay, grandmother.
Grandma, first person that I would want to have dinner with one last time. I didn't get a chance to see her when she transitioned. Number 2, I think of the leader that I would like to be in the short time that I still have to be a strong leader, and that's I would like to have dinner with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because he was a passionate and a compassionate leader, and he used his voice to make such tremendous change in our world. And I would just hope to leave just an inkling of his power and his passion. The third person that I would love, and I'm going to get personal again, to have dinner with is my father. So my grandmother died in 1998. My father died in 1999. He did not see the person that I would eventually become, and he played an amazing part in that. I didn't grow up with my father, and as we start to go through these questions, we'll tap a little into that, but I know that I would enjoy one last time just to tell him I love him.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I similarly have that experience of not having the time that I wish that I could have with grandparents. Yeah. And so that's beautiful. It's summertime. We actually just celebrated the first day of summer. My child reminded me that summer means vacation. Those things are always fun. We haven't gone on one yet, but he reminded me. And so question for you, Stacey. I want you to Share a memorable travel experience or maybe a destination that's left a lasting impression on you.
Yeah, so this was in 2008. At the time, I had been working for Merrill Lynch Capital and gotten laid off. It was so early in the recession, I didn't even know what was about to happen. So I'm like, this is great. I can take a long vacation, because when do you ever have the opportunity to do that? So I booked a trip by myself to Thailand for a month. I met up with a group of individual travelers. We had a tour guide, because I do not speak Thai. And one of the places that we visited was a hilltop tea village. And they were considered to be so remote, they had their own dialect. And they had no running water, no electricity. And our guide asked us to please not share any photos or anything on our phone about, our lives. People were from the US, Canada, Europe, because he said that they were very happy and content with their lives. And he did not want to expose any of the villagers to things outside of the life that they are really happy with. And especially thinking about that today, when we're just bombarded with, all of these kind of images of a perfect life, and and it's just so hard on a lot of people. I constantly think back to that, but also in the moment, what was so interesting is that it allowed me to really focus on being in that experience with these people, because they were so happy. So I was like, Stacey, don't get worked up about you're going to have to go to the bathroom in a hole in the ground. It's going to be okay. And that's really just stayed with me, because it was just such a different experience, and really getting back to a more simplistic life, and people that were just genuinely happy with the people that they were surrounded with.
I was just about to give a plug for the hashtag, and now I'm thinking twice about it, but I will. I think that's a great segue. There are things that are mentioned today that you think are worth sharing with others, whether it's on social media, if that's your thing or not, right? Think of other ways that you can share valuable information and learning, and perhaps even some commitments that you plan to make today, whether it's using the hashtag EmpowHER Mosaic, or sharing it with your colleagues or friends at home. I think it's really important for those takeaways to leave with you, right? But be shared beyond the conversation and who's just in this room. So thank you for that, Stacey. Before we ask AJ Drexler the same question, I just want to mention, by the way, I don't know if Tracina did this on purpose, but I mean, two AJs, really? Trying to get me, she was trying to trip me up today, but it will not happen. But before I ask you that question, I do want to ask AJ Jefferson, because listen, this AJ told me to do it. AJ, where did that come from?
Well, such a story. Okay. So
give us the abridged version.
Okay. So my name is Ardana, and no one ever pronounces it correctly. So my mother is CJ, so I just became AJ, and it's so funny. My family was in town this weekend, and they said, "How are you just going to rebrand yourself? How do you just, eliminate your first name?" I'm like, it's just easier, AJ Jefferson. So that's how AJ Jefferson came about.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
Branded myself.
And so many of you know that people call me Sab, right?
Yes.
If you know me, know me. Mm-hmm. And I just did that. I literally just okay, yeah. I'm gonna be Sab today. That was the 21-year-old me, by the way. Now, AJ Drexler, yes. Tell us about your travel experience or memory. What destination had a lasting impression on you, and what can you share with us?
I'll tell you that it was AJ Foyt winning the first Indianapolis 500, and the 6-year-old boys who decided that was going to be my name.
Your name.
Yes, and my maiden name was Dragala, so it was AJ Dracula. So, anyway.
There's a lot packed in.
6th grade boys. I think the most interesting destination that I have been to, and this will give you a little clue, I'm a bit of a history wonk, was Ephesus. So we were in Turkey earlier this year, and or in the fall of last year. And Ephesus is, the letters to the Ephesians, it's that Ephesus, which is, this miraculously preserved, basically archaeological site where 35,000 people lived in 400 BC, and men and women were considered completely equal in that society. And the library is, just this amazing spot, and you think about historically how that happened, that there was just this true equality between the genders in that space and time that then gradually got unraveled over time. I think it's if you ever get a chance, it's an amazing place to visit.
Well, sounds riveting, and I feel like we all are expecting our invitation for this next journey with AJ. I'm in the space in my life where if someone invites me and it's already put together and planned, I can say yes, but if I've got to do any work, help me out.
There you go.
Anybody else in that space in their life right now? Okay. So all of you that are not, invite us. It's summer, right? It's time for vacation. So final question. And so this fun or deep, however you plan to move, I'm going to start with you, Stacey, if that's okay. What's your favorite quote, or do you have a mantra that motivates or inspires you?
Yes, so it's not by anybody famous. I was 24, very early on in my career, and I supported a group of lenders, commercial real estate lenders, and one of the lenders, his name was Charlie, had asked me to do some research for him. He's like, I need, to figure out this about this market. And I tried really hard. I spent like over a day, and I'm researching, and I cannot find the answer. And so I'm like, okay, at some point, he's probably wondering what I'm doing, right? So I went into his office, and I told him, I was like, Charlie, I cannot find the answer. And he looked at me, and he was very pleasant, very nice man. And he just smiled. He's like, well, Stacey, if you don't figure it out, who will? And I was like, all right, I'll be back. And, like that always stuck with me, because it's not, like he didn't mean like don't ask for help, because it just wasn't that kind of situation like where I was asking for help. It was like, hey, you're it. Like you need to figure it out. And, that is really, being in the role that I am today, that happens all the time. I'm it, so if I don't figure it out, who will? And, I've told this story so many times because I just think it really helped motivate me to just kind of take it that next step. Like if you think that you can't figure it out, you can, and just, take a break, do whatever you need to do. But, it just was one of the most helpful things somebody ever said to me, instead of just being like, okay, fine, I'll figure it out. He was like, nope, you're doing this. And I really appreciated that. But there is another quote, and it's like Audrey Hepburn, on a bad day, there's always lipstick.
Love it.
So I like that one too.
What brand?
I'm a lover, if people that know me in this, I'm a lover of lipstick. I usually have a bright lip. I'm very tame today, so all the lipstick, the brighter the better.
All the lipstick, all right. AJ Drexler, I'm gonna come to you next. Memorable quote or mantra?
Again, sort of the history thing keeps coming out. Ralph Waldo Emerson in 1841. It's easy to live in isolation by your own standards. It's easy to live in the world by the world's standards. The challenge is living in the world by your own standards.
Very profound. We're going to keep the mics up here, though, but I just wanted to give like a... Enough said.
Okay.
AJ Jefferson?
Sure. I think phrase, the mantra that I live by is pay it forward. And it was told to me when I was a young professional, and my mentor of almost 30 years, because she's still my mentor to this day, I went into this office at a nonprofit and I just knew I had it all taken care of. I knew everything. And she grabbed me by the hand and she was like, honey, I'm going to be your mentor because you are doing everything wrong. So over the next several years, she showed me a lot. And then I had this wonderful opportunity to interview for this amazing job in Orlando, Florida. And I was so excited about it, but at that time, I couldn't afford the suit that I needed to wear to that interview. And so she gave me her credit card and told me to go to Saks Fifth Avenue, which was downtown at the time. And she said, buy any suit that you want to buy. And I was like, are you serious? And she was like, absolutely. So I went and I didn't break her card, but I came close. And I felt wonderful in this beautiful suit that my mentor funded for me. And I got the job. And when I got the job, I was like, okay, I'm gonna pay you back for this suit. Please let me pay you back for this suit. And she said, no, the way you pay me back is to pay it forward. You need to do what I did for you years ago. You need to take a young lady by the hand and you need to say, I'm gonna help you navigate these waters. I'm gonna be there for you. And hopefully I've done that many, many times over.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Wonderful testament. And you're certainly living that mantra for sure. So before we transition, I mean, obviously I'm going to share mine. And I feel like I know a lot of you, and if you follow me on social media, you've probably seen me hashtag this a couple of times a day or so. But my mantra is smile and move. And I usually say it as I'm either remembering something that's occurred or trying to just encourage myself. And so, and it goes literally just, smile and move. And it might sound really simple and basic, but for me it is quite profound. There are numerous times in the day, in life in general, when you just don't even think you can muster up the muscle movement to put a smile on your face, or why should you? How dare they even ask me to? But for me, it's smile for yourself, right? Inside many times, right? Smile for yourself. And then sometimes that outside smile can encourage somebody else to smile back at you, and they may have needed that. And so even in encouraging yourself, you can encourage others and then move forward. Never backward, but always forward. So that's my gift to you. Smile and move. So that was fun, right? It was a little fun. And thank you for being good sports with that. I know that everybody wasn't really comfortable with getting into the icebreaker moment there, but it went pretty well, don't you think? Yeah, okay. We'll clap for ourselves there. So let's get to know each of these panelists. You know where they work, but let's dive in a little bit deeper. I'm gonna start with you, AJ Drexler, here to my left. Could you just tell us a little bit about your background, your journey to where you are today? And we're going to be mindful of our time, and so if you want to get to know these wonderful individuals on a deeper level, the networking space is going to be for that. But we do want to give you a little bit of the foundation here. Okay.
So the concise version is that I have spent most of my adult life as an entrepreneur. I started, actually the last time I had a boss, I was about 26. Until now, I have a board of directors. But my career really was a matter of building a business and selling a business and buying another business, and that was pretty much what I've done since shortly before being 30. But I started that first business in my bedroom with an infant on one hip and 2 little boys and a husband in law school. This is the moment I decided was the time to start this whole new adventure. So I did, and so my journey began in isolation in my bedroom, and then eventually, in the basement, where, the business got a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and then, and I will be totally honest with you, then I worked myself into a seizure and had to move the business out of the house because I was working night and day and had to learn balance, kind of. I've never quite mastered that, but learning how to integrate, ultimately I ended up having 5 children and a growing business and sort of always managing them simultaneously. So I was super lucky that as I was starting the process of selling my last business to my partners, a wonderful gentleman by the name of Joe Callahan called me up and came to see me and said, hey, I've got this organization that helps entrepreneurs grow their business. Would you be interested in taking this on to scale it? And immediately I said, who ever thought that entrepreneurial skill could actually be helpful to somebody else? And that there could be a whole, sort of nonprofit next step in my life. And so that's what I'm doing now. I help entrepreneurs and super small businesses grow to be really good suppliers, to be big enough to really supply other organizations. So that's what I spend my time doing.
Awesome, awesome. And I'd be really interested to know personally your thoughts on this idea of work from home and hybrid, considering your start and what that has done to the workforce.
It has always sort of been part of my world. Like literally the business was in the house until it wasn't in the house. And so I have been somebody that didn't have a lot of boundaries between those things. It just moved right from the business into the PTA meeting or whatever I needed to be doing at the time. And so I built businesses that were like that. I've always had women who wanted to do lots of things in their life, working with me and for me, and making the space for them to do that. Kid forgot their violin, go. Like whatever needs to happen to keep your life going and your business going, we've always sort of done. So the fact that you do it at home, I think the one parallel was isolation and loneliness. Like I think early entrepreneurship is extraordinarily lonely. And I think early COVID was too. Like figuring out ways to kind of get through that. They had those two things in common. But I think figuring out how to balance, just what you need to get done in the day and making that all work is entrepreneurship is perfect for COVID.
Yeah, for sure. AJ Jefferson, what about you? Let's hear a little bit about your journey for those that don't know and what got you to where you are today.
Well, much like AJ, I'm a workaholic, so I love to work. I'm currently the CEO of Homeless Children's Education Fund. It's a 24-year-old nonprofit organization that focuses on the education of students experiencing homelessness and housing instability. When I first moved here to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I am from Niagara Falls, New York. When I first moved here to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, it was an immediate decision that my mother made when I was about 8 years old. And it was a family decision that she had to make. She had to leave my father at that time. And she decided not to go back to Niagara Falls. She decided to come to the beautiful city of Pittsburgh. And because she made that decision because she knew she would be able to provide a better life for me here in this city versus going back home to Niagara Falls. But when we got here, I was homeless. And so a lot of people don't understand the definition of homelessness. And if I can, I'm going to tell you what the definition of homelessness is. It is a person that doesn't have a consistent, permanent, and adequate nighttime residence. So consistent, meaning they're reporting to the same dwelling every single night or the majority of the week. Permanent, that means that your mother, your father, you are on the rent, lease, or the mortgage. Adequate means that it's livable. Okay, so when I moved here, I had to move in with my great aunt Ruth, who I loved and adored, but that wasn't my mother's home. And there were several other people that lived in that house, and several people who did not want an 8-year-old running around or opening the refrigerator door to get food or things of that nature. So I wasn't allowed to be a child. And so what happens when a child isn't allowed to be a child? They regress in their education. It's not a priority. I came from New York State. I was very well educated when I came here, but I didn't speak. the first year I came here, because he left my father, my grandmother, and my granddaddy are in Niagara Falls. I come to Pittsburgh. I don't know anything about these people and where I am. So I was homeless for a year because I had to live with my great aunt. Homelessness, most children who are identified as homeless are doubled and tripled up in housing, okay? And again, they're in jeopardy because that's not their caregiver's primary residence, all right? So I was homeless, but you know, my mother and my family, we got on our feet. And I went to Seton Hill University. And when I went to Seton Hill University, I went for English first, okay? I was like, oh my God, I gotta read all of these books? No way. So I changed my major to communications. And then the last semester of school, right before I graduated, an adjunct professor came to Seton Hill, and he was a salesperson. I don't remember his name, but I went through that class, and he pulled me aside. He was like, you're a salesperson. You need to get in sales. And that scared me so much because I come from instability. I come from homelessness. I need to know how much money I'm going to make every single day, every single week, every single month. So that scared me. But I went into nonprofit work. My mother set a great example for me. She always volunteered. And she said, this is what we do. We give back. Even if we don't have it, we still give back. So I started to work in the YMCA of Pittsburgh when I was in college. And when I graduated, I became full-time employee of the YMCA. And I spent all of my adult life, I think about 99% of my adult life has been working in the nonprofit world. So how did I become the leader of the Homeless Children's Education Fund? I always say like this, I felt like God put me to sleep for a little while, right? He put me to sleep because I never wanted to be the boss. I never wanted to run an organization. I got that experience when I was in Orlando and I had an opportunity to run a YMCA in Orlando. And I never wanted to be responsible for people again because people can be cruel, okay? So this opportunity comes, you know, almost 30 years into my career, this opportunity comes. And I'm talking with another person that's kind of like a mentor of mine as well. She's a really, really great friend of mine. And this comes across my email. The recruiter specifically sent it to me, and I said, oh, I'm gonna send this to you. I think you're better for this. You're better suited. This is an education organization. And she read the job description, and she said, no, I'm okay where I am, but you need to go after it. And I was like, I'm not an educator. I'm not doing this. And she was like, you don't need to be an educator. You need to know how to run a nonprofit, and you know how to run a nonprofit. So I applied for the job, and it was the quickest process that I've ever been through. And at that moment, in going through the process of applying and interviewing for this job, I remembered I was homeless. See, I blacked all of that out because it was a tough experience. I remembered I was homeless. I remembered all the emotional situations that I went through, all of the emotions I went through, the trauma I went through, and going through that process. And now I believe, I'm a Christian, and I believe God brought me into this organization for a reason. Am I an educator? No, I'm not an educator. But my job is to make sure that we employ the best educators in the world to support these students and to make sure that they see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that they see that they have been given beautiful gifts and they can explore these gifts regardless of what's happening in their home life. So they can have consistent, caring adults in their life that are going to follow them from elementary, middle, high school, all the way to college, and they don't have to worry about that. So that's my full circle moment.
Most certainly, yeah. So talk about full circle and identification of purpose. But before we move to Stacey to learn about your foundation here, I want to make sure that we get these mics together. What exactly do we need to do to get rid of that feedback?
Just have the mics a little bit closer when you speak.
To each other?
Just to yourself.
To ourselves. So if we can move the microphones closer to our mouths, that way we can get rid of that feedback for everyone that's listening, okay? All right, wonderful. It did. It did. Thank you. Thank you for that. Now, Stacey, tell us a little bit about your foundation. What brought you to your role? And tell us about what brought you to Pittsburgh, please.
So I am originally from Texas. My family is from the Rio Grande Valley. Whenever my parents got married, they moved up to Houston. My dad worked shift work at the chemical plants because that was, the best opportunity, for them to be able to support a family compared to remaining in the valley. And as a result of all of his hard work, he put in all the overtime that was available. His gift to me was being able to put me through college. I was the first person in my family on both sides to go to college. I was a very good student, played sports, but when it came time to picking a university, I knew nothing about it. My family knew nothing about it. I didn't even know that that's what the counselor was for. I thought you went to the counselor, like if you weren't quite in trouble enough to go to the principal, you went to the counselor. So, I didn't reach out for help or anything because I was that clueless. So I picked a university that most of my friends went to, and the way I picked my degree was, I knew that, or I thought that people that were in business, did well financially, so I could, provide for myself, and I was good at math, so I picked finance. And it was really, as simple as that. So earned a finance degree from Texas State University, moved to Dallas. Again, very simplistic decision. Dallas is a very large financial city, so it's like, well, I guess I should go there. Moved there, and I thought I was going to be more involved in investing, stock market, but I graduated in 2001, and that was the .com bubble had burst. So now I have moved. I had no money, I had no family there. So I talked to a recruiter, and I got a position as an admin at a commercial mortgage brokerage. And so what they do is basically finance commercial real estate, whether it's the construction of commercial real estate or the refinance of existing structures. So similar to homes, but on the commercial side. And I found out that I loved commercial real estate. It was very interesting to me. Worked there, started, went back to school at night to get my master's degree in business. Again, simple reason was just I wanted to know that I could do it. Finished that degree and, decided that I wanted to move to Chicago. My boss worked in Chicago. I'd gone up there a couple times. I really loved the city. And for whatever reason, I thought that I needed to move to an even bigger city because, Houston, Dallas, those were not large enough apparently. I needed a place where I did not have a car. So I moved to Chicago. I worked, as I mentioned, for Merrill Lynch Capital. I financed commercial real estate all over the country. One of the biggest projects I did was, if anyone remembers, MySpace, a data center. It was a $900 million facility. It was an incredible project. I was working with investment bankers in New York and LA. I thought I was big time, just pretty much lived in my office, constant takeout, but I loved it. Then the 08 recession happened, went to Thailand, came back, and for the first time in my career, nobody was calling me back when I was looking for a job. And then, the news came out more and more that we were entering, a pretty serious recession. So I did what I, would do in my normal day-to-day. I started researching markets all over the country, and I saw that Pittsburgh had a flat market, which in times of great growth, that may sound kind of boring, but I can tell you in a recession, that looks like an oasis. So I applied for a couple of jobs here, one with Huntington Bank, doing commercial real estate finance. and then also with Reed Smith for business development. I took the position with Huntington because it was in line with what I had been doing for my entire career, and did not have a car, so I went to go buy one, and I drove here in a complete whiteout blizzard on whatever highway that is that gets you from Chicago to here. Yeah, and I hadn't driven in 2 years, and I had never driven in snow because if any of y'all remember when the Steelers played in the Super Bowl in Dallas, how much crap that they got because, there was ice and there was no trucks and it was a big mess or whatever. Well, they just shut the city down. That's just how it worked. So here I am driving in whiteout conditions. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if you stop, do you keep going? Is someone gonna hit me? I blocked it out.
Was that Snowmageddon? What year was this again?
That was December of '08.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, if things couldn't get worse, I got down. You'd think I would know all the bridges now. Over here, where you had to cross like this underneath the bridge on top of you, because I had rented a house in Mount Lebanon, and I was like, what is this? It was awful. I was literally shaking, and that was my intro. Well, when I came out for an interview, so a little more positive first impression of Pittsburgh, I flew into town and came through I am totally
Fort Pitt Tunnel.
Fort Pitt. Thank you, AJ. I was about to say the Liberty Tunnel. I knew that was wrong. I live in the north now, and so I don't cross the river anymore. So
no tunnels.
Yeah, Fort Pitt Tunnel, and experience the whole view of Pittsburgh, which I had no idea. I wasn't expecting it. I knew nothing about it. And I was just like my head hanging out of the cab window, like staring, at how gorgeous it was. So I moved here. I thought I'd be here for a couple of years as the economy, recovered, and but at the time. The way, especially, I'm sure it's this way in a lot of the different industries, but the commercial real estate industry, it's just such a tight-knit group of people. They were so welcoming and so supportive of me being here and, just interested to know why I was here. And really started building a network, which we'll talk about, a little bit later. And my career was it was taking off. And, I went through some rough personal things, and I thought, well, now's the time. If I'm gonna move, I should make my move. So I had rented an apartment downtown. I was really thinking about it. And then, of course, I met my husband, who is a Pittsburgher through and through, loves Pittsburgh. And, so here I am. But then I needed to figure out what the next step in my career was, because even though I enjoyed what I was doing, I had worked on a national level, and that was just, I loved that challenge. And I wasn't going to be able to get it with what I was doing here on a more local level. So what do you do when you're looking for a challenge? You have a baby, you're pregnant, and you start a business.
That sounds about right. That is the recipe in a nutshell, by the way. It is the example, though. This is the keeping it real, EmpowHER Mosaic, and that is the recipe for sure. You have no other choice but to win.
Yes.
Literally, right?
Yes.
So we know a little bit about our panelists here, maybe a little too much. Maybe not, but I do want to take a moment. So who here in the room is supporting and leading and working for one of our region's businesses? Supporting, leading, working for. Who here is employed by themselves? Who is a entrepreneur in the space? Okay, a nice balance. I wanted to get a feel so that the panelists know who is in the space. It looks like almost a 50-50 split. Some of you all didn't raise your hand, but yeah. I know who you are. Right? Come on. Crowd participation is important here. When we get to Q&A, those folks that didn't raise your hand, I know your name's going to call on you. You're wearing name tags. That's the way that this works. I want to hone in on that space. I know that in entrepreneurial, this isn't one of the questions that I told them I was going to ask. I know, I'm doing it already. But an entrepreneurial spirit is and has been essential, it seems like, for all of you. And I captured that in listening to your stories and your journeys. And so I just wanted to ask for anyone that is willing and feels like they have something to contribute, what about this entrepreneurial spirit that you possess is fueling the work that you're doing now, and that you feel is important for folks to tap into, whether they are running their own business or whether they're supporting and leading in a business in this region?
I can get started. You know, there is something about, I think there's a little bit of it's born in you. I mean, there's a little bit of that, right? There's a little bit of, like, I am fairly certain that we all drove people crazy as kids, you know? That there's like a little bit of a, you know, get it done, plan things, run the neighborhood activities. Like, there's a little bit of that. But I think another big part is giving yourself permission to take the risk. You know, so, and, you know, both of my parents died when I was in high school. And so there is something about, when you've lost everything, what else is there to, you can just take risks like that, because it couldn't be worse than that. Like, the outcome couldn't be worse than that. So I think it's a matter of, you know, thinking about the risk of entrepreneurship in context to what the alternative is, whether it's the right sort of balance for you as a human being, and whether you can tolerate the risk. Because it's part of it. It's part of the story. Like, being able to, you know, having to sweat it out when the cash flow is not quite there. You know, what to do when, you know, you can't pay your employee. I mean, there's challenges there. So I guess that's what I would get us started.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question is because whether you are running a business or you are working to support a business, like I am, right? So I run a nonprofit, but I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit, right? And I was listening to AJ Jefferson. You know, someone said that you sell, right? You know how to sell. And Stacey, you know, you are navigating transition and figuring out how to answer unanswered questions. And those are all skill sets that are important for entrepreneurship, in addition to helping to drive revenue in business in general, regardless of what level you're in, what role you play. And I think sometimes we forget the importance of kind of navigating those skill sets that we have, regardless of the position that we hold in our lives. And so a piece of what each of you, what I've observed that each of you have, I think it's important to think about how you tap into that for those of you in the room, in the roles that you're in. And some of you, I think, are secretly thinking about your own entrepreneurial journey too. So just maybe you're mentioned.
If there's no sales, there's no revenue.
If there's no sales, there's no revenue, right? Right. Anyway, so I just wanted to segue into that for just a moment. We talked about some of the bad behavior that each of us exhibit in this kind of workaholic environment that we've created for ourselves. Did I say that about me? That was all of you, actually. I concur. And so, AJ Jefferson, I want to talk a little bit about work-life balance. It's essential for well-being, we know that. How do you manage to find time for yourself, engage in activities and recharge? Like things that inspire you amidst the professional commitments, how do you find time for that? Now, I will say this, I wasn't gonna ask this question because I feel like we only ask this when there are women on the panel, but I recognize that it's important for people of all genders to understand the importance of work-life balance and how it impacts everyone in their lives. And so it's an important question.
Thank you for asking me that question. I talk a lot about work-life balance, and I actually don't believe in work-life balance. I don't believe that when you think about balance, you think about a scale, and every time I accept another work assignment, I have to, then schedule a trip somewhere, right? That I often talk about that stresses me out. I don't have time to do that. I talk about work-life integration, the things that I love to do that bring me joy, that put a smile on my face, those little moments that I can easily integrate into everyday life. One of the things that I did when I first started, and you get this opportunity if you're running your own business or if you're running your own nonprofit, you get to set the pace of how fast people work, how often people working, what the example is. And so what my example to my staff is that we're doing hybrid. You don't have to worry about coming into work 5 days a week. That we work from home 3 days a week and we work in the office 2 days a week. So that allows me to be the mother that I desire to be to my son. That means putting him on the bus. That means being there when he gets off the bus, either me or his grandmother. And it means taking moments throughout the day that help de-stress me, calm me, just allow me to be in a better place. I start my day off, every single day I started off with breathing techniques. I started off with my own affirmations. I started off reading some passages in a book, and I ease into my morning. And if I'm not allowed to ease into my morning, I'm not the best AJ. I do not accept a meeting prior to 10 a.m. I'm very committed to that. I'm almost 50. I dare someone to tell me not to change that around. Okay? I dare you to change that around. There is one day every week that I do nothing. Nothing. I know myself well enough to know that if I schedule things every day for 7 days nonstop, I will not be in a good space. So this weekend I had family in. My 95-year-old granddaddy was in, and yes, I call him granddaddy. My 95-year-old granddaddy was in, and as much as I love spending that day with him, the day and a half with him, and I had Tally this weekend too, Sunday I did nothing because I would not be able to show up for you guys today or my team today. So you have to know yourself. You have to understand how far you can stretch yourself, and you have to be non-negotiable about taking the time that you need to take to make you just feel good about who you are and feel good about what you're doing. I also enjoy what I do, but I discipline myself. As much as I enjoy it, I can work every single day, all day, because I love what I do, but I know that I cannot run that race successfully. I have to take time for myself every week. Every week, okay? Even if I forsake getting my nails done or whatever, I take that day. My son knows this is my day. Don't bother mommy, okay? That's
I love
my advice.
it. I love it. And I think that AJ Jefferson just saved us from the bad behavior that we were exhibiting earlier. So thank you for that. And so, AJ Dexter. I want to talk about collaboration and support. We know that those two elements are really important for personal and professional growth. So AJ, can you share an example of a collaboration or even a mentorship experience that's left a positive influence on you and your career trajectory?
So I talked a little bit earlier about the loneliness involved with starting an entrepreneurial enterprise. And, early on, I don't know, maybe in the first 3 or 4 years, I discovered that there was an organization in Pittsburgh called Women Presidents Organization. Mm-hmm. And it was fairly new here at that point. Somebody else had the competitive seat. So I couldn't get in, and I didn't have the revenue yet. Mm. So I worked at it. Like, I'm going to get that seat. I'm going to get that revenue. I'm going to work my way into that organization. And eventually I did, mostly because she left.
A small city.
Was a good friend of mine. We just happened to be in the same industry, so we couldn't be in the group together. That was really important. Stacey and I are actually in the same Women Presidents group now. But it was important not just for, you know, the peer-to-peer opportunities that I had every month to sit down, you know, with these other, you know, 15 or 20 women. That was huge. Like I learned what to do when you had an employee come in drunk long before I ever had an employee, because somebody else had to deal with that issue. And so the interaction with that group was great. That part of the collaboration, but I also think what happens when you sort of commit to participation in a group like that or a group like this, and you go in, you know, sort of full steam, all kinds of opportunities open up. WPO had a national conference, and and it was the first one I had ever gone to. It was in Dallas, and one of the speakers was a woman from the Harvard Business School who got up and did the Tesla case, and I was like, this is so great. And at the end of her conversation, she said they have a half tuition scholarship for a 3-year program called the Owner President Management Program at Harvard Business School, and there was a competition. It was so exciting. I didn't go to any of the rest of the conference. I went back to my room and I wrote the application, and then I got a stack of business cards and I walked around anybody who had anything to do with Harvard Business School, and I pitched them all over the conference. So, of course, it was due at 4 o'clock, and at 3:56, I got to the table to put my application in, and the woman who had been the speaker was standing there. She looked down on her table and she patted this stack of my business cards, and she said, well, it's about time. So I won that scholarship, and I was able to go to Harvard it was a three-year program, 3 weeks a year on campus. And for the first time, I actually knew how to do evaluation on a company. I knew how to do all the stuff that I had actually been running businesses without knowing. And so it kind of brought the full circle, but it was really just because I invested my time and energy in that organization and then did the full advantage of all the things. You know, ultimately I bought my last company from one of the other women in my WPO group. At a conference, I asked her if she would come to my room and have a glass of wine and listen to my idea for her business. And we did it there, and she said, sold, and I bought her business. So.
I love it. So, first of all, AJ Drexler, is that program still around?
Women presidents?
Not just the women presidents.
Oh, the OPM
also
program.
The OPM program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the OPM program is an amazing program at Harvard Business School. They desperately want women because it's really tough at the life stage that a lot of us are at, when that's the right thing for us to do because those darn kids are home and they actually don't want you to leave for 3 weeks every year. So it's a challenge, but a super, super important opportunity at that stage of your career to really go to that next level. And also the people that you meet at that program are global, can help you grow your business. 3 of my classmates are now on my board.
That's amazing. And so we're going to talk a little bit about networking and establishing yourself in Pittsburgh with Stacey. But I do want to mention that I think it's so important to consider things like acquisition as an opportunity and a pathway to entrepreneurship. A lot of folks don't think that entrepreneurship is a potential opportunity for them, but there are tons. We're in a city that has an aging population and that has a ton of businesses and individuals that perhaps are ready to sell their business, and that could set you on the right path for a successful entrepreneurial journey. And so acquisition is certainly
and there's
an
a
option.
class at HBS and a book right now that's basically the subject is buy a boring business. I mean, it's not, you don't have to be a tech guru to start a robotics thing to be an entrepreneur. You know, you can buy a business that already exists and has great revenue, can take care of your family, and the owner wants to finance it for you because they're ready to transition. So yes, there's lots of ways to get into that space.
I mean, shoot, I wish I would have thought of the whole lanyard and badge thingy, right? If I would have been the person making these, goodness, how many of these do I wear and do I have in my car? I should be selling them. But thank you, AJ. Now, Stacey, we're going to end kind of the formal questions. We're going to do a call to action in a bit, but I do want to really round us out here a bit because we do know that building a network is essential. I talk about relationship building all the time, and in Pittsburgh and everywhere, quite honestly, relationships matter. can you give us a couple of tips and talk about how establishing yourself in the Pittsburgh community is important, and any ideas you have to share with the audience?
Yeah, so, like you mentioned, you constantly hear that you need to build your network. And I would say earlier on in my career, I was just so focused on my day-to-day working. I didn't have a lot of opportunity to get out and meet people. Like I mentioned, I was working more on a national level, so there was some unique challenges working in that space. But when I moved to Pittsburgh, I quickly learned, it was like instant how tight everybody is here. And in a good way, in a really good way. And, when I moved here, as I was saying, like the Pittsburgh market was very stable at the time, but it was impacted, in the first quarter of 2009. And so working at Huntington at the time, it changed everything. Where I was told I was coming in and I was going to be working on new deals, they completely shut that down, and I became a person, it's called a workout person, where I'm basically calling people and saying like, hey, if you don't give me more money, we're gonna, take your property kind of thing. And I was like, I cannot do this. Like, I cannot be in this job. I just moved here. Everyone's so tight. If I become like this workout person from Chicago, this is just going to be an absolute, like the kiss of death. So I quit. I had another job first. But I was talking to a friend of mine who had moved to a different bank, and I was like, I have got to get out of here. Like, this is just not going to be good for my career. And he's like, well, we have a position available for you. It's a lateral move. I'm like, I'll take it. I don't care. And, making that move was huge. And then I got involved with different networking groups here. The biggest one I'm on the board of now is NAOP, which has been instrumental in the development of my career here. The number of people that I've met, just the diversity of the group and the willingness to help each other. Like there's just different aspects of commercial real estate, and we all rely on each other. And building those relationships is vital if you're going to be successful. So in starting a new company, the biggest challenge is how are you going to get work? And we had a relationship with the developer, we had relationships with like a lot of developers, but it's like, who's going to give you that first try? And a developer did. It was a very small project, and then he loved the way that we operated, because we are not like an old school general contractor. We're very much like, collaborative, like, work as a team. I'm not beating my chest out there yelling at people. If I have to yell at you, you're already fired, so, but from that start, based on our existing relationships and how we performed with that one developer, like the word started getting out, and every single job that we had from then on was based off of an existing relationship or a referral from a client. And it has been absolutely huge. And, it's really important to maintain that if you want to stay successful. Because while everybody's going to build you up, the reality is if you, break your word, or you're not truthful or honest, people aren't going to forget that, and people are going to hear about it. And you can really just tank yourself by not doing things the right way. So I think that's kind of a good check and balance too. But
absolutely, business integrity is quite important in a place like Pittsburgh, where everyone knows your name, so to speak, and can speak positively or quite negatively about their experiences with you. It's great tidbits for sure, Stacey. Thank you for that. I do want to give the audience an opportunity to ask a question or two. And so before we do that, I wanted to give AJ Jefferson an opportunity to share ways in which folks can be helpful or contribute to the work that you do. A bit of a call to action here.
Thank you. So again, Homeless Children's Education Fund, we are a team, with the exception of me, educators that actually go wherever students need us to go. So if that's in a shelter, if that's in a school, if that's on their front porch, if that's in a library, if that's in a park, my team goes to wherever that student needs us to go. We have a slew of volunteers that support the educators that go out. We believe in going in teams of 2 and teams of 3 because we want to give as much attention to that child and nurturing that child as possible. We also want to make sure that we are following some standard risk management procedures as well. So we recruit volunteers. You do not have to be an educator. You do not have to be an expert in anything. You just have to be a caring adult who is willing to support these students. Monday through Friday, we see tens and tens of students. There are 3,100 students who have been identified as homeless in our county. And so the only way we can impact that number is partnering with volunteers, because I can't hire enough people to support those students. So volunteers are greatly needed. Partnerships are greatly needed as well. We have a mobile learning program. Again, we're getting ready to transform a brand new van into a mobile classroom. So we need people who are experts in the social determinants of health to come out with us, people who are in the healthcare field, who are in the finance field, people who have, specialties in the social determinants of health, to partner with us as we go into neighborhoods and we provide supportive services to these students. We also need people to give, right? The mayor was at our last stand-up demonstration, which was in October during Homeless Children's Awareness Month, and we did a stand-up demonstration in the middle of Market Square. And I say this repeatedly, and this is what he said: $5 is a powerful gift, especially when 2,000 people are giving it. So it doesn't matter if it's $1, if it's $5, if it's $5,000. It just matters that you're giving it to support the students that no one ever talks about. So those are the multiple ways that you can support us as an organization.
And if you are interested in supporting and finding out more about AJ's work, feel free to talk to her afterwards. AJ Drexler, excuse me, if I screw up your name one more time, just bop me in the head. I know I said I was going to get the AJ situation together, right? I know. Towards the end here, I'm falling off. One, I obviously want to give you a moment to talk a little bit more about the work that's being done and how folks can be engaged and support. But I've always been extremely impressed and inspired by your personal commitment and the impact that you've made in advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in this region, especially in the supplier space. And bringing awareness to the opportunities that exist for companies to join in support. If you could, twofold, right? If you could talk a bit about that work, and then also share how folks can help support your work.
Absolutely. So we have a very serious problem in this country in that, and it's one that nobody's talking about, that 81% of our small businesses today have revenue of less than $50,000 on average. So 81% of our businesses have average revenue. They're non-employer businesses, many of them, and they have revenue below $50,000. The upshot of that is that their owner's compensation, the money that they're actually taking home to their families, is on average $26,136. It's below the poverty level for a family of 4. So we have this situation. On the other end of that, we have the number of businesses that are getting over $1 million stuck. It's been 9% for my entire adult life. Women have gone from 6% to 8%, but there's been imbalance in other areas. Black-owned businesses, it's 4%. So all of you who are in this room who want to get diverse businesses to be good suppliers for you, it's like a needle in a haystack because there's only 4% of businesses that are getting over $1 million. And the vast majority have revenue under $50,000 and really can't, they just don't have the bandwidth yet to be good suppliers. So what our organization does is bring entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs, a little bit larger than that average 50,000, together in groups of 10 to 12, very much like the Women Presidents Organization model, but for smaller businesses, and help them grow as close to $1 million in revenue as they want to get to, and then beyond, so that they can then become really good suppliers. So putting them into groups of 10 to 12 that stay together for 3 years. Sometimes they're coming after a startup accelerator. Sometimes they've been in business for 15 years and they're just stuck, because without the knowledge and information that they need to get to that next step, they just don't have the resources to grow that business bigger. So we just finished our impact study, and here's what we know. Last year, nationally, 41% of businesses grew in 2022. Some stayed the same, some lost. 41% grew. Of our cohorts, of our peer groups, of everybody, all the members, 58% of them grew. But 61% of our women grew, and 68% of our businesses of color grew. So all of those businesses, when they have each other and they have the tools that they need to grow, they absolutely can grow. They can get to whatever size they want to get to. It might be that they can get to $500,000 and then, do the crazy stuff with their kids and their families and all the things that they want to do. Some of them have the capacity to grow well beyond $1 million, but we have to get them started. And so my ask to you is, if you are an entrepreneur in this room and you want to grow your business, we're here for you. If you have a friend, a family member, a young man or woman in your neighborhood who's trying to grow something, we are here for you. We have actually 20 seats available right now that are funded by the Hillman Foundation in Southwest Pennsylvania. So send them and we'll help them grow.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. For me, it's a privilege to sit with these women and learn from their experiences, to get to know them a bit better. I do want to hone in on the importance of relationship building, and that's going to be my ask for you tonight. I mentioned that if you heard something that you think is shareable and that should leave the room, and please take it with you. EmpowHER Mosaic, that's the hashtag that I've been told to share on LinkedIn, on your other social media platforms, but also share the good news with the folks that you believe should have been in the room and that could utilize this information or these relationships. We can dispel myths, bias, and many of the challenges that we experience here in this region and elsewhere by building relationships and just getting to know people and their stories. The origin of how they came to be and where they're trying to go can take us so far. I've learned that it's important, the work that I do at Vibrant Pittsburgh, but it's important to the community person that I am in this region as well. And so I ask you please to consider building a new relationship tonight, embracing and engaging with someone that you do not know. We hear that all the time, but how often do we take the time to actually do it? It stopped raining outside. It's a little wet on the street, but it stopped raining. Take a moment after this panel discussion departs and get to know somebody that's in this room that you're not familiar with and understand their story, not just what they do, but why. That's going to change the trajectory of your life and also this region, building those individual relationships one-on-one. You may not own the business today, but maybe you do. You may not be hiring people today, but maybe you know the person that is. And the person that needs to be connected is in this room, without question. Thank you so much for this conversation. I did want to open it up for some questions. I know that we're a little over time, but if there are questions, I want to create a space for those. Please let us know your name.
Morgan, question for AJ Drexler. So how did you, what did you start as your first business, and how did you determine to even do that? Were you interested, you're like, oh, I know I can do this, I'm good at it?
Yeah, it was what I was already doing at that point. So I actually moved to Pittsburgh to work for an ad agency here that I had been with actually in Erie. I'm originally from Erie Insurance people. You too? Well, there you go. We'll have to follow up on that. So I moved here with the same company that I was there with. And after about a couple of years, I said that third baby was going to be born. I really was fortunate in that a client took me out for lunch and said, you know, if you ever went out on your own, I would come with you. And I said, oh, no, we cannot talk about that. That is not, no. He said, I know, I'm just saying. So, of course, it planted the seed. And so I thought about that through the whole maternity leave, and I was like, as I said, now's the time, this crazy time, but it was an opportunity. It's very similar to that OPM story. Like when the opportunity exists, you can't create that necessarily of your own volition, but you have to be able to okay, I guess this is it. And so I resigned from the job that I had, and then I called him up and I said, gosh, I hope you were serious. And he said yes, and I met him. His business was about 2 hours away. Met him halfway. He was a client for 20 years. So he was the core. I mean, I was able to safely make that crazy step because I had that sort of stable one client. The seizure thing happened because I was afraid to say no to business. I had that base, but you never know what the next piece of business is going to be or the next piece of business. So that's something that I had to learn over time, that there's always going to be enough business. And so just feeling confident enough in who you are in the work you're doing to be able to say, okay, I actually can take one day off. Should have done that. Because the work is always going to be there. There's enough work for every entrepreneur that wants to do work, right? We had 5 million new businesses start during the pandemic. And there's only 32 million businesses in the whole United States. I mean, over everywhere, 5 million in just 2 years. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think it's really a matter of, what do you do well? What could I leverage into this? I mean, that's one way. We also talked about the other way is shopping. There literally are baby boomers who need to sell their businesses. They might be window washing, or they might be dry cleaning, or they might be just the things that our communities need to keep going. You might not have ever thought about owning that kind of a business, but the market is there for it, the revenue and the profit are there for it, and you can walk into a business and get it started, because a lot of those people will finance for you. So there's a lot of ways to get into entrepreneurship. It's really about of exploring them all and then just picking the one that works for you at that moment, and mitigating risk as best you can.
Yeah. I bought my son a vending machine. He's a business owner. He's 3. He'll be 3 in July.
Good. Very good.
It's just my phone. Any other questions?
I was a WPO lady.
Yes, you were.
I ended up having a business, and it went through WPO, and my phone blew up one night, and it was like, do you know this woman, Blair Britton? I don't know if you know Blair Britton from CDI Printing, but I was amazed and inspired by her because she's a black woman that has a Harvard degree in business and law, and she's 41. I'm 61. I know I look younger, but yes, I know. She's 61, and my phone was blown up for the WPO sisters. So they always have your back. I mean, it's a great group. And they were, do you know her? Do you know her? Do you know her? And I was just getting into an exit plan for my business, and we had the same footprint. And I went to get coffee with her. And so Blair and I got together, and I went from president to CEO, and I told somebody else earlier, my business card says Senior Business Development Manager, because I wanted to continue to work. But I wanted to work with nonprofits. And this is my question. I thought right away, this is great. Blair is a veteran, minority-owned, woman-operated, and uses recycling practices, and has 60 employees and a huge manufacturing business, a printing and mailing and everything. And I'm thinking, this is great, my nonprofits, my strong women, my strong girls, all these people that I worked with before, but I couldn't get the money, or they didn't have grant people to write for them, or they're small, just like small entrepreneurs. Nonprofit doesn't mean nonprofit. It means nonprofit when you're an entrepreneur Trust me, this business, my business was 39 years old. My husband died, we weren't dead, and I had kids when I took over. So let me tell you what, there's grants out there, AJ, any of you, if you can share that information. The other thing is, I jumped in this, and everybody was, what was your degree? I'll never forget. Everybody, PhD, here. You know what my degree was? MOM. I came out of high school as PTA, taught Bible school, had Girl Scout troops. I was June Cleaver when Mike died. And I didn't expect my husband at 49 some years to die, but I was thrown into that. The thing is, you gotta humble yourself and accept who you are. And you go to the University of Pittsburgh, I have an advisory board. They did it for free for 4 years to teach me how to read a bank reconciliation. I knew nothing. If it wasn't for WPO, AJ, you were up there with Yvonne. Those women had my back. And never once did I feel insecure. I gained confidence, but there's resources out there.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to know if there's any way that you can help, because I'm in there going, thinking, oh, this is great, I'm gonna go help my people. Get your marketing money. All your marketing money can get grants. And it won't cost you a dime through me. And Blair would piggyback on that. She just did the signage and everything. She's the most giving woman I ever met. She'll give it to her, you know, to her nonprofits. But they don't know how to get money when it's right in their back door.
No, it's true. I mean, and I think the thing that probably we share, you could probably talk about better than I, is that, you know, bandwidth. You know, like, we know it's out there. I think that it's how do you prioritize the time to find where those exist.
Right. So I learned something from my former CEO, the YMCA of Central Florida, which is the 7th largest YMCA in the country. It's a $75 million organization. When he started his career, he always hired for or recruited volunteers to complement him, right? To complement what he didn't know how to do. So he was a salesperson, so he always handled revenue generation. He always handled that, but he hired someone to watch the money, right? So I would encourage you, if you're going into your own business, look at your own skills, your own talents, and where does that balance? You have to drive revenue, but you have to prioritize it. Are you the one that's driving the revenue? In my organization, I am the one that drives the revenue in my organization. I have a grant writer. I'm hiring another development person, because a nonprofit, you know, Sabrina, we were just talking about the entrepreneurial spirit. We have the blessing of running our nonprofits, but we are entrepreneurs, right? We have to raise the millions of dollars every single year to make sure that those doors are open. So we are constantly looking at least I am looking at opportunities to raise money, to raise revenue, whether that's grants, whether that's bringing on individual givers, maybe that's corporate giving. So, you know, I said all that to say, you have to be focused on revenue generation, but you also have to be focused on the sound business practices that keep your operation moving forward. And how do you balance your staff, or balance your volunteer pool, or balance your relationships to help you be able to do that?
And there are certainly dollars available. I mean, our region has, you know, one of the most reputable philanthropic giving systems that people know here in this region with our philanthropic organizations and foundations. I mean, the Pittsburgh Foundation has individuals leading investment departments, and so. Considering building relationships in that particular space is important as well. Recognizing who is supporting what and what their focus is in the space in which you do business is going to be important, especially if a part of your mission is to give back and to invest back into community. Figuring out who you can partner with and who's aligned with that work should most certainly be a priority, for sure.
And I think the key thing of what you said, and I may not have stressed that, is relationship. Is that
this is a city built of people who know each other, or people are second or third removed from each other. They know your name, or they've seen you around. They know somebody that you know. And when I came back to this city in 2017, no one knew me because I was gone for 18 years. So building a network and building relationships were key. Now, when I came into this role a year and 3 or 4 months ago, no one knew me at that level, you know, running an organization. So I had to further network, and I had to network with purpose, intention, and priority, you know, networking with foundations and people who give money philanthropically, and building relationships with those people. Sending an application or sending a grant app somewhere and no one in that organization knows who you are, knows your name, or knows what you do, that's suicide. You're 9 times out of 10 not going to get. You have the homeless children. I have one of the best causes there is. But if you don't know people, if they don't trust you, if they don't see that you live what you're saying, you're not going to get the money. So build relationships. It's not just about the application.
So I'm gonna transition to Tracina because I know that we need to close. But to support that, what I will say is, so the question behind the do is how. And so how do you build those relationships? Most folks will say, well, I don't know. You just told me that there's an investment department at the Pittsburgh Foundation. Well, I don't know anybody at the Pittsburgh Foundation. What am I supposed to do? Just cold call or send an email? Let's put the puzzle pieces together. So Pittsburgh is a connected city, right? And so that means that there's an individual that knows an individual that 9 times out of 10 will be willing to make a connection for you. And if the work that you're doing is impactful and important and innovative, then there is someone that's going to be willing to go to bat for you in these spaces. You have to speak what you need into the spaces that you occupy. So when you occupy, as AJ mentioned, with intention, then you are also communicating what those things are. You're not asking, you're sharing. This is my vision. This is my mission. These are the needs that I have. This is what I bring to the table. You're answering questions based on solutions and not on problems. These are the ways in which I can transform spaces. This is what I intend to do. This is how I'm already doing it. You are the solution to the problem that people don't even know that they have. That's how you build relationship, by letting people know who you are. That's what it really, truly looks like. Not asking, not going with an agenda, right, to get someone to do something for you, but just to make a connection. And those relationships and those pathways build themselves. I guarantee it. All right, thank you. Tracina.